Hoops Tribe. So I want to introduce this new section to what I do call headlines because there's so many things that are buzzing in the WNBA right now. A lot of you have been asking me to talk about specific topics. So let's get into it. One of the number one headlines that's been buzzing for a while now have been the firing of Coach Miller and Coach Teresa Witherspoon. Coach Miller was the coach for Los Angeles Sparks. He had 2 seasons with the organizations and they decided to mutually part ways. I personally understand the decision. Just looking back to Kurt Miller's track record with Connecticut in the 2019 championship, I believe that final game came down to a lot of decision making from coaching and how to handle personnel and rotations. And I think that's some of the same things that we've seen happen this season. So I completely understand what happened there. Magic Johnson is one of the 6 owners of the franchise, and he said he's going to be a lot more hands-on moving forward. So I do look forward to what are the next moves for Los Angeles. Obviously, the players had a lot to say publicly, like De'Erica Hamby and Rakia Jackson, because he was special to them on a personal level. And those are the things that people like you and me, we don't see that. I can't speak to those things. I'm strictly speaking from a coaching business standpoint, and I do understand the decision, and I wish him the best moving forward. I think he can be successful, but maybe in another role with another franchise. Coach Teresa Witherspoon is a different conversation because she only had 1 season with Chicago, and what's special with this is that Chicago also has a new GM, Jeff Pagliacco. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's the new general manager. He came in 2023 after Coach Spoon, which is important to note because he's the GM. So she wasn't his selection, and that could be a factor of why she's no longer the coach of the team. It's just not, it just doesn't fit his vision or style. The history of Pagliacco is interesting because he was actually already with the Chicago organization. He's been a director of skill development with the team for 4 years, and he moved into the general management role in 2023. They said they wanted to hire in-house. When you have this information, it all makes sense as to why he would honor the trade for Marina Mabrey. He's known her for some time, and she just wants to succeed. And I can imagine if you built that type of rapport, you would want your friend to succeed elsewhere, even if it has nothing to do with what you're doing. That makes sense. What doesn't make sense to the general public is it seems unfair for Coach Spoon to be fired because she didn't have a lot to work with. As an outsider looking in, I think we all had our opinions and gripes with some of the decisions that were made from Coach Spoon all season, whether it been rotations to timeout management to just general things with the media. I gave her a lot of grace because I knew that this was her first year, but I can't expect a franchise that wants to win, that wants to see success at a faster pace than some of us fans to have that same grace. And the fact that Spoon was hired before Jeff was put into his position, we have to take that into consideration because he now has the reins of the team, like it or not. So he's going to want the coach that he sees for the vision that he has for this organization. Right now, I'm going to trust what he's doing. He's been in skill development and has worked with men and women and high school athletes for some time. So I'm going to trust that he can see talent. Kahleah Copper also commented because he was there while Kahleah Copper was with Chicago. And she also attested to his knowledge of talent and him being a attractive piece for Chicago and a reason why players would want to come to Chicago. Now that was him in his skill development role, not necessarily him as a GM, but I'm going to trust that he knows what he's doing at this point until he shows me that he doesn't. I do think that this could have been handled better. Teaspoon wasn't the only person to be fired in this situation. The social media team was also fired. So he just cleared house. And it's unfair to everyone. It's unfair for them to be put in their position. They were hired before he came in, but they were hired with like a false pretense because everyone knows when you get a new manager that they're going to do things completely different from how the old manager did. So I think everyone is treated unfair in this. They were treated unfairly, and he was also treated a bit unfairly because this isn't his personnel. And honestly, being fired at the end of the season isn't unprecedented. I've seen organizations fire people in the middle of the season. I think it was Indiana before Coach Sides came in. There was a coach that they had that only coached 7 games before they were fired. So it isn't unprecedented for a coach to be fired at the end of the season. I would say at least they allow her to finish the season. Of course, we feel for Coach Spoon because of her, the way that she is as who she is as a person, and everything that she's given to the game of basketball. We feel for her. We know that Angel Reese and Kennedy Carter leaned on her throughout the season, so we're concerned for 2 of the most popular players with Chicago. So we don't know how it's going to be for them, so we're empathetic in that regard. But I think that people that have watched the Sky throughout the season can understand that there were some questionable decisions made by Coach Spoon. And if we take our emotions out of it, maybe we can see the future goal for what Jeff is trying to do. That's why I'm going to leave it right now until I have more information. And until we see what's to come of this next season, I'm going to hold any opinions that I have on him as a person. Now, there's a lot of people talking about who they think should be the coach for Chicago, and Sheryl Swoopes' has been thrown out there. Dawn Staley, Kim Mulkey. First of all, Sheryl Swoopes already said hell nah. 2, Chicago cannot afford Dawn Staley or Kim Mulkey. I don't think that Chicago can afford any D1 coach. NCAA is paying good money for these women. I think more realistically for Chicago, they should look into getting a smaller Division 1 or a Division 2 coach. I say that specifically because those coaches know how to work with little and make a lot. I think that it would benefit them to look at some of the higher ranking D1, small D1, D2 schools, probably more so D2 schools, see the higher ranking ones, look at their coaching strategy and see what may fit the vision. But I think that college coaches have an edge over WNBA coaches because they know how to work with a limited roster. And that's something that Chicago is going to have at least for the next 2 years. They have 2 top picks in the 2025 draft, and they're going to have some top picks in the 2026 draft as well. But we can't expect a great season or a team that's going to contend based on the backs of rookies and second year players. It's just, I don't see that as a sustainable concept. So I think having a coach that knows how to work in these environments could benefit them. The Las Vegas Aces have lost twice now in the semifinals to the New York Liberty. Becky Hammon in the presser after the second loss said that it's hard to three-peat because the edge just isn't there. She talked about not feeling that same energy from the jump that they had in last season, and that for 8 months the league has been mad at the Aces, that they've been doing commercials. You know, her players are superstars, and the Liberty are just the better team, and they have that chip on their shoulder since losing in last year's finals. And she felt like they may be feeling like the Aces took something from them. And I agree. There's nothing in that statement that I disagree with. I think that it is easy to become comfortable when you're already at the top. You know, people at the bottom have something to fight for, but when you're already at the top, then, you know, what is it? They've already won twice. I also think that this statement lacks a bit of accountability, which I've said this about Becky Hammon before in previous pressers that she does. And she may just be avoiding accountability to the general public. I don't know what she's saying in the locker room. She could very much so be holding herself accountable behind closed doors. But I think that as a leader, it's important to say these things in the public. And I think that a bit of why the Aces are not being successful in this semifinals has a lot to do with the decisions that are made off the court and essentially by like coaching staff. I think that there are other teams in the league that have made moves to become better, and I don't know how many of those moves the Aces have made. I think the strongest move that the Aces have made was signing Tiffany Hayes, but you got like the Liberty, who they're just getting, but Sabrina Ionescu has just gotten a lot better. She could have definitely got a most improved nod this season, because she's just gotten significantly better from last season, and she's playing a lot with a lot more confidence. I think that Kennedy Burke was also a good addition, and Leonie Fibich was also a good addition to the Liberty. So they've added some things and they've fine-tuned some things, and they are just the better team at this moment. I think that the Aces have lacked making adjustments, even though Becky is one of the best in the league when it comes to adjusting on the fly, and I mean that in the sense of like play creation. When it comes down to using her clipboard, I think she's one of the best, if not the best in the league, to come up with the play on the fly. But as far as like rotations, I think that she's a bit stubborn, and her previous comments about Megan Gustafson before this second game was that she felt that the game is really fast, and that was one of the reasons that Megan did not see any playing time. And she said that she would likely see playing time in the second game, but she didn't see any playing time. And I'm a firm believer is just try it. Just try it and see if it works. I mean, she really had nothing to lose at certain points because she was already losing. So if you already got your back against the wall, then why not try something different? And I think that there were definitely times where Megan Gustafson could have got a look, or Queen Egbo, especially Queen Egbo for me, because she has size. And I think that these players are a bit younger, and older coaches, or when I say older coaches, I'm not necessarily talking about age, but coaches that have been doing it for a long time, they're stubborn in the sense of they don't want to try new things or new personnel. And I think that that could be another reason why Queen Egbo and Megan Gustafson aren't seeing playing time, because they aren't as tenured as some of the other players that are on the Aces who have that playoff experience. But I don't think that's an excuse, because Leonie Fibich, she's a rookie, and look at what she's doing to the veterans on the Aces. She's really they getting their ass whooped. Like, and at this point in this third game back home in Las Vegas, I want to see something different, and it has to be something different from the players and the coaches. If not, they're gonna get swept. And if they don't get swept, I don't see them winning the next 3 games playing the way that they're playing and using this same rotation that she's using. And she might not be able to use it anyway, because Kia Stokes is in concussion protocol, because her and Jonquel Jones bumped heads at the end of that game too. So she might be forced to have to do something different. And sometimes that's what God do. Sometimes if you don't want to make a move, God gonna make that move for you. So we're gonna see what happens. But I think that statement was true. But I think that it was an unfinished statement, because she should have included herself with some of those sentiments. I just think that there's room for everybody in that space. Looking into next season for the Aces, Tina Charles is a free agent, and I would love to see Tina Charles and A'ja Wilson together. Honestly, another experienced post player to complement A'ja in this high-low. She needs a two-man game, because there's too much pressure being put on A'ja, especially when you have a player like Kia Stokes who's not producing on the offensive end at all. And she's kind of producing defensively, but I don't think it's enough to the point where they just feel like they can go. They don't need to go anywhere else. That 2-year contract extension for Kia Stokes is still bothering me. I'm taking that real personal, because I love the Aces. But I just feel like if the Aces were to add Tina Charles in the offseason, that would be a key. That would be something huge for them coming back into the new season and making a semifinals run, a finals run, if they add someone like Tina Charles, or Tina Charles herself if she wants to come back. This isn't really a headline, but this is something that I keep seeing in my comment section every time I talk about the Connecticut Sun and Minnesota Lynx matchup, is this eye poke that Dejanay Carrington did to Caitlin Clark. They've already discussed this. It was an accident. It obviously looked like an accident to anybody with a working brain, but people are still dragging this joke, and I just want y'all to shut the fuck up. Like, bro, this is, first of all, it's the weakest black eye in the history of black eyes. Her eye was never even black. First of all, let's start there. Her eye isn't even black. The girl was able to shoot the ball afterwards. They just lost. They not only lost once, they lost twice. Let the joke go. It's not funny. No one's laughing. No one's actually laughing out loud at this joke. So can y'all please let this eye poke thing go? Let it go. But moving forward in the Minnesota Connecticut matchup, I still am holding on to hope that Connecticut can win this series. Now it's tied up 1-1 and they're about to go home to Connecticut. This second game, Minnesota really turned up the physicality. They really matched their energy and probably exceeded their energy. I think Myisha Hines-Allen was, she was on a tear. I don't know what they said to her in that first matchup, but they pissed her off. So the second game, she wasn't playing no games with them. And that's the type of energy that they need. I thought it was real interesting for Cheryl Reeve to say that she had been eyeing Hines-Allen for a while. So she was happy to have her on board in this season. And that's really cool because coming from Washington, a team that was like the worst team in the league, to now you're playing for arguably the best team in the league, that is a complete 180, and I'm really happy for her. And I can see why she has so much passion in the way that she's playing right now, because these are the moments that you live for as an athlete, to compete at the highest level. So she's really proven herself, and she wants to stay on this Minnesota roster. I think overall the Suns shot poorly, and they probably were suffering from getting punched in the mouth because they weren't expecting that level of physicality. Minnesota just shot a lot better than the Sun. I mean, it's hard to win when you got DeWanna Bonner shooting 33%, Dejanay Carrington shooting 38%, Brianna Jones shooting 33% on 3 shot attempts, and Marina Mabrey shooting 29%. Like, that's the core of your team, and they're shooting terribly. I think Brianna Jones, man, it's just it bothers me so much when people with size don't utilize their size, and for her to only have 3 shot attempts in that game is crazy to me. So that's a testament to the Minnesota defense, but then it's also they just weren't running their offense, and I don't know if it was a combination of the physicality frustrating them and not allowing them to get into their sets, or them just overall mentally not being checked in to that game. Olivia Nelson-Ododa played better than Brianna Jones, and I would have liked to see her get more playing time. I would even go to inserting her into the starting lineup, because that's what wakes people up. You gotta take action if you want to see some action. And I think inserting Olivia Nelson-Ododa would be big for the Sun, especially coming back to Connecticut. And I think that she has the athletic ability to step up. Veronica Burton wasn't there offensively like she's been for them in the previous game, stepping in for Ty Harris. Ty Harris looks to be back. She played 7 minutes. She didn't necessarily play well, so I think maybe that's why they pulled her out and thought that she wasn't ready. But overall, I think that Connecticut still has a chance in winning this series. I'm banking on them. I really want them to do it. They just got to focus. They got to lock in. I don't think that this next game is going to be as physical as these referees allowed it to be at home in Minnesota. I don't think that level of physicality was conducive to either team. I don't shy away from physicality. I love that. But at some point it becomes dangerous because now the players are frustrated and it could come to a brawl. That's my biggest concern for it. Like, you keep letting these fouls go on, somebody gonna want to fight. So I think that the referees have to they gotta reel some of that in this third game, because I just do not want to see another game like what I saw in Minnesota. And hopefully I don't see another game where Connecticut is shooting this poorly. The Lynx just have so many threats. They have so many people that can shoot well. I knew that first game was uncharacteristic of them to shoot that poorly, and Courtney Williams didn't play well in that first game, and she turned up in that second game. So I expect that of the Lynx, but I just don't expect for Connecticut to shoot that poorly moving forward either. So we'll see. I think that this is the more exciting series that's probably going to take us that has the bigger capability of taking us to all 5 games, is this Connecticut Minnesota matchup. But what are your thoughts overall, Hoops Tribe, like about any of the topics that I hit on today? Let's talk hoops.